It began like any other cold day for Mallory Harrigan, Cliff, and Alan Russell. The three were sailing in the coastal waters of Labrador, Canada, looking for crabs when they saw something surprising. On a nearby iceberg, an animal seemed to be in trouble. It looked cold and alone, and hungry seagulls were swooping down at it. Feeling sorry for the creature, Harrigan and the Russells knew they had to help. What they found next was a big surprise. This was unfortunate because, until that moment, everything had been going smoothly. The group was a little behind schedule, but nothing unusual had happened. A month later, Harrigan told People magazine, "We started late, but there was a lot of ice that kept us from leaving." So far, the day had been like any other. The trio was sailing their boat, the Northern Swan, toward a place called Feinstein's Arm to stop for fuel. However, as they got closer to the town, their normal day turned into something extraordinary. About 4 miles from the shore, they spotted a big iceberg that looked like a mushroom. But what really caught their attention was an animal stuck on top, looking like it needed help. The iceberg was floating out to sea with the animal in distress. At first, the crew thought it was a seal, but if that were true, why hadn't it jumped into the water to escape? It turned out that this animal wasn't a seal or any kind of sea creature. It couldn't swim and was stuck on the iceberg, with no chance of rescue unless the crew of the Northern Swan acted quickly. Fortunately, Harrigan, his partner Cliff, and his son Alan were ready to help. They couldn't just sail past the trapped animal without trying to save it. However, their rescue mission wouldn't be easy. Icebergs can be very dangerous. Remember the Titanic? Icebergs can be unstable, and pieces of ice can break off and fall into the water. This means people should stay away to avoid being hit by falling ice. The coastal waters of Newfoundland and Labrador have many icebergs, but only a small number come from the Canadian Arctic. Most of them break off from the glaciers in Greenland. Regardless of where they come from, Newfoundland and Labrador have plenty of icebergs. There are so many in the region that the people living there make use of them in interesting ways. The water from the icebergs can be drunk. For instance, it's used in the production of alcoholic beverages such as beer, gin, and vodka. Back in April 2017, an iceberg from Newfoundland and Labrador made significant waves. The structure was enormous. People could even see it from the shores of a small settlement called Fairyland. The town's mayor spoke to the news agency, the Canadian Press, about the situation, stating, "It's the biggest one we've ever seen around here." The 150-foot-tall iceberg became a sensation, with people in the region descending upon Fairyland to catch a glimpse of it. Tourists uploaded pictures of the berg online, generating remarkable interest. Eyes from all over the world were now focused on the tiny Canadian town. So, 2017 was a big year for icebergs drifting into the northern reaches of the Atlantic Ocean. Experts even recorded more than usual that year and offered 2 reasons to account for the spike. Winds of unusual intensity and direction may have encouraged the icebergs into that area. But the more troubling suggestion was that global warming had led to the behemoths breaking off from Greenland's glaciers. Regardless of the reasons for their appearances, icebergs can be mesmerizing to behold. After all, the structures can feature a dash of colors, tunnels, and pieces of rock frozen into place. Creatures have even been known to get trapped and preserved within the floating chunks of ice. Yes, you can never be sure of what you're about to encounter when faced with an iceberg, but the crew of the Northern Swan was still in for a shock when they got closer to the animal trapped on the iceberg before them. As they got closer, it became clear that the animal wasn't what they first thought. A few days after the rescue, Harrigan told the Dodo, "We thought it was a baby seal, but they changed their minds as they approached." So, if it wasn't a seal, what was it? To the surprise of the 3 sailors on the Northern Swan, the creature was not a sea animal at all. Harrigan later told People that it was a small Arctic fox. Arctic foxes usually live in burrows, so how did this one end up stuck on an iceberg in the middle of the ocean? Harrigan shared Cliff's thoughts on the matter, saying the fox probably got stuck while looking for food. Cliff believed it had gone to check out some meat on the ice, and when the ice broke, it sent the fox out to sea. This theory makes sense. Arctic foxes are tough animals, well suited to the harsh Arctic conditions. Their small ears, furry feet, and short snouts help them survive in very cold temperatures. However, this particular fox looked to be in serious trouble when the crew found it. The fox was thin and cold, and it seemed close to death. Harrigan and the Russells were touched by the creature's plight, but they were also a little reluctant to help. On top of the dangers of approaching an iceberg, there was a consideration that the fox was a wild animal. They couldn't know how it might react to their presence. Undeterred though, the crew opted to act in the hope of saving the fox's life. So they sailed their boat towards the berg and then attempted to lure the animal onto the vessel, but the creature was reluctant to leave the iceberg in favor of the boat. As Harrigan later recalled to Bored Panda, she explained, "The fox was trying to run away from us at first, so we had a tough time getting him aboard." The creature must have been so confused about what was happening to him, and it must have been very worrisome for the crew in case he reacted violently. But the crew put aside their concerns to get the job done. If they left the animal, after all, it would likely perish. As Harrigan put it to the dodo, "We knew we were his only chance for survival, as the winds had changed and were driving all the ice farther out to sea, but the animal still put up a determined fight. In fact, the crew had to think on their feet to gain control of the situation." Speaking to People, Harrigan explained what they did. She said, "I had to break off a piece of ice so we could get to him in the water and scoot him up with the dip net. Once he was in the icy water, the fox struggled and struggled until he lost all his energy. It was only then that the crew was able to pull him aboard. From there, they set up a temporary bed to allow the stricken creature to rest and regain its strength." Speaking to People, Harrigan recalled, "The fox crawled into a corner and curled into a ball. We tried to feed him chips and crackers, whatever we had on hand, but he wouldn't eat for a long time." This was a concern, of course, as the animal was in dire need of nourishment. The crew members worried that their rescue efforts might have been in vain too. The fox's life appeared to be on a knife's edge, with his survival far from assured. Eventually, the creature took to his new sawdust bed, where he could rest and warm up. Harrigan explained to People that the fox had slipped off to sleep almost as soon as he curled up in his bed, and he then roused himself from his slumber quite a few hours later. If anything, that's a testament to the awful stress that he must have endured on the iceberg. Eventually, the fox woke up and finally ate some food. Harrigan told Bored Panda, "He wouldn't eat at all for the first 5 to 6 hours. We gave him chips and crackers, but he didn't want anything until we found him a tin of Vienna sausages." Once the crew showed the fox they were trying to help, he started to relax. After what must have been a long time without food and sleep, he was ready to eat. When the ship reached land, they set the fox free. It was hard to know how long he had been stuck on the iceberg, but his appearance gave a clue. Harrigan explained to People, "A friend told us that an Arctic fox should have brown fur this time of year. The fact that his coat was still mostly white showed how long he had been out there, which may have been weeks. Arctic foxes have white fur in winter to blend in with the snow. In summer, their fur changes to brown or gray to help them hide when the ice melts. This helps them hunt birds, rodents, and fish. In winter, food can be hard to find, so they might follow polar bears to eat their leftovers." The fox likely got stuck on the iceberg while searching for food. He was trying to survive but ended up in a tough situation. Luckily, some kind people were sailing by just in time. If the crew hadn't found him, the fox would have drifted far out to sea with no chance of getting back to land. Harrigan said, "The winds had changed southwest, so if we hadn't found him when we did, he would have drifted farther out to sea. Thanks to luck and the help of the crew, the fox survived. After he ate, they released him to live on his own again." Harrigan said, "We dropped him off in an old doghouse. He shook himself off, and that was it." After his rescue, the Arctic fox was often seen roaming the area where he was set free. Harrigan never had to say goodbye, saying, "We still see him from time to time, running around the island, chasing small animals." The fox became a local celebrity, with his rescue story gaining worldwide attention despite the limited internet in the area. Harrigan was thrilled to have helped save him, noting, "We knew our little friend could be the talk of our small community, but we never expected him to make waves around the world. We're pretty excited."